Okay, so I'll go ahead and kick things off by introducing myself. I am Amanda Herford. I'm the Scholarly Communications Director for PALMI, and I'm one of the project leads for Haiku for Consortia. Gretchen, you can advance the slides. And on behalf of our whole team, I'd like to welcome you to our first Haiku Commons user group meeting. If you would, please take a moment to introduce yourself in the chat with your name and your title and your institution. Our participants today are from PALMI and PALC and our newest partners at Lewis and Vivas, so you'll probably see some names that are new to you. And you can go ahead and advance the slides, Gretchen. So while you're doing that, I'd like to invite other members of our team to go ahead and introduce themselves, starting with Kirsten.
Hi, I'm Kirsten Leonard. I'm the Executive Director for PALMI. I think everybody here has probably already heard who PALMI is. Welcome all of you, and we're delighted to keep expanding our team here. PALMI's been on the search for an IR that's affordable and that we can share for a long time. And of course, the only way we were going to get it is to make it. And the only way we were going to make it is by partnering. So thank you all.
And Jill?
I was just going to say, I think I'm up next. Shut my door. My dog is barking in the background, so I apologize. I'm Jill Morris. I'm the Executive Director of the PALC Consortium, often confused with Kirsten's group, although I don't mind that. We are the Partnership for Academic Library Collaboration and Innovation with a newly updated acronym, formerly the Pennsylvania Academic Library Consortium Incorporated. 74 institutions here in Pennsylvania and the surrounding region, and very happy to be partnering with PALMI on this effort and to see you all here today. Thank you so much for being a part of this pilot.
And Gretchen?
Okay, I'm having a little bit of mute difficulty this morning. I was in another meeting that went from 9 until 11, so I might be a little brain dead already. And I see I advanced the slide. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I'm Gretchen Gigan, and when I am competent, I am the digital projects manager at PALC, and I'm the project manager for this Haiku for Consortia project.
And Nick?
My name is Nicholas Stanton Rourke. I am an archivist at a PALMI member school that has been using Haiku. And then for the past 18 months, I have been a project coordinator for the Haiku for Consortia project. So that's involved both use of the product itself and then also onboarding and providing instruction and help as needed for all of our PALMI and some PALC members who are using Haiku. So I am both a sort of manager and also a user. So when there are issues that plague other users, I feel the pain as well.
Thank you. And I see we're on our agenda slide. That's good.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't want to risk advancing another slide forward. So
this is great. So I wanted to show you all what the agenda for this meeting looks like before we dive in. So we're thinking that we'll spend about the first half of the meeting talking about the grant project and how we envision you being involved. So I'll cover goals and timeline, and Nick will talk more about expectations, both from participants and from us. And then Gretchen will give some details to you about how to get started with your participation and talk a bit about our plans for user research. And then in the last half of the meeting, what we'd like to do is to give you a chance to get to know each other a bit in breakout rooms and to share your goals and have a conversation amongst yourself, and then reconvene and share a little bit about what we learned and talk about next steps and hopefully have time to end with some questions. You can advance the slides. So I just shared our agenda, but just to kind of give you some high-level goals for what we'd like to accomplish in this meeting. First is to pass along some key details to you that you might need about how to get started, how to participate in the grant, and specifically next steps for what you need to do and what we're going to do to help you out. And then also, and probably even, the most important thing is to start building this user community of Haiku users. Again, we want you to start talking to each other about your goals with Haiku and how it's going, working with Haiku, and kind of lay the groundwork for future connections that you'll be able to make in talking about Haiku as the platform that you're using for your repository system. You can advance the slides. So a bit about the goals for the grant project itself. Our overall goal for the IMLS grant project that we're currently in is to remove barriers to adopting Haiku. And the way we see that working is we want to work with you in order to find out what are the problem areas with Haiku. What are the things that are preventing users from being able to effectively use this as a repository system? And then what are things that might also be barriers to institutions choosing to adopt Haiku for continued use? And then once we've gathered ideas about what those problem areas are, to work with our developer to make high priority improvements based upon those needs that we've gathered from you. So together with you, we're hoping to learn about how to make Haiku more flexible and accessible and overall usable, and then to work together with our developer in order to actually make those improvements. We also, as a secondary goal, have our operational toolkit that we're working on. So we're creating this operational toolkit as a model for how to run a repository system at the consortial level. So things like creating documentation, how does support work, what does the user community look like, how do you actually administer something at the consortial level? We're building all of that as we work through this project with you. And we'll be asking for your feedback on all of that as we work through this project. Next slide. So our grant itself is a 2-year grant, and it runs from August of this year to July of 2023. And we've already been working on some development with Notch 8, and we're now at the point where we're inviting in new users and starting to create this user community, as I mentioned. So some of you have been working with Haiku for a while. You already have your repositories built and they're off and running. And some of you are somewhere in the middle stages where you've just started to dabble with it. And some of you are brand new, you don't even have your tenant set up yet. And that's all fine. We're here to work with all of you. But for the purposes of this grant project specifically, we're asking that all of you actively use Haiku and participate in the user community that we're kind of fostering here for at least the first year of the grant, which will go through July of 2022. And you'll have the option to continue through the end of the grant in 2023. So we really want everyone to get in there, start working with it, give us really good feedback for at least that first year, and then have the option to continue throughout the life of the grant and possibly beyond, depending on the situation and how the business model works out. And then during that time, we'll also ask you to give feedback again on our operational model and to participate in some user research and data gathering, things like potentially surveys, focus groups, interviews, things like that. So we'll be reaching out to you for plans on how to do that. And also some data gathering, as I mentioned, through surveys. So, giving us information about how satisfied you are with the system and how certain aspects of the system are working for you. So that's our overall timeline and how we're envisioning you fitting into it. So now I'll pass it off to Nick, who's going to talk a little bit more about expectations for participation.
So for our participants, and I'm thinking especially about our new partners who are piloting this from Viva, from Lewis, but we would also invite this kind of participation from ongoing users from PALNI and PALC, whether you have a live and visible repository, or you have a sandbox that has not yet gone public, but that you've been experimenting with. First, we would ask that you would actively work in Haiku as a repository administrator. So you will each have your own separate repository that you are an administrator for. You can have co-administrators with you or add as many other participants in that repository as you like, whether that's student workers or faculty contributors. But we would specifically ask that you're active in Haiku through, as Amanda said, July of next year. But of course, as long as you want to continue using it after that, you are welcome and invited to. But what we mean by that specifically, and these are some high-level items that could be broken down, but brand and theme your tenant. One of the nice thing about having Haiku in this consortial environment is we have top-level sort of super administration of the entire product, but each repository can establish its own branding and theming. We've created some sort of new front page formats that are kind of tailored to different types of collections or types of repositories. So brand that to your institution, play with those options, see what you like and what you don't. Also upload works, describe those works, create collections that feature those works, and then establish workflows that work for the specific projects that you have in mind and with whatever participants from your institution are working in your repository. Also, at least a willingness to participate in user research. That'll take a few different forms over the period of the grant, but that might be one-on-one interviews with our UX consultant or user groups or filling out surveys that are sent to you. Not every single person will be involved in every single bit of research. They might be reaching out for a specific number of people and so on, and that'll adapt as the time goes on. But being willing and available to participate in user research as available. And then finally, provide feedback and participate in community. Gretchen will talk a little bit more about what that community aspect looks like, but we are setting up a space where, in addition to reaching out to us and asking us questions, you can interact with each other and sort of discuss the product and the experience of working in Haiku. If we want to go to the next slide. I want to really emphasize that we're asking you to participate in the Haiku environment and to work with the product, but what you do with it is absolutely up to you. And one of the exciting things that I've seen working with participants that are already active in our Haiku repositories is lots of different projects, lots of different kinds of projects. Some are more scholarly focused, faculty publications, e-theses and dissertations, making OER for various coursework available. Some is more digital humanities focused, institutions publishing their 150 years of their student newspapers, making those available. And so you can see we've created these different themes that can highlight different aspects of that, but feel free to do whatever kind of project you want. Initially, when you receive your repository, it will be accessible only to you. It will be technically in the environment, but unlisted. It won't be discoverable through search, and it'll be behind a kind of a password login system. But as soon as you are ready, we can take that live and it'll be listed on the Haiku Commons website, discoverable through search engine. You can link to it from your institutional web pages. So really feel free to push in whatever direction you want that you can make the repository work for you. And to that end, if you want to go to the next slide, Gretchen, some things that you can expect from us is we will, for those of you who have not already indicated who your administrative users are and what your URL will be, we will contact those of you that we do not have that information from, set up those repositories and get your login information to you. We will offer ongoing platform support. So if there's ever any technical issues, we have contact information that you can get in touch with us through a couple of different means, and we'll be quick and responsive on that. We will provide documentation for how to work within the environment, how to create collections, how to give your users different permissions. We'll do both open training sessions for groups, or if you want one-on-one training, then I will be able to meet with you and do that, and we can work through whatever you're trying to accomplish. And then we will take all of this information and user feedback and your experience, and we will analyze that data, and we will implement development based on your experience, so that we're not just guessing what would be good for the product, but we take your actual feedback and try to address those issues that the community itself is coming up against and continue to improve the product that way. So now I will hand off to Gretchen, who will talk a bit more about some of those training resources and what next steps will be.
Okay, great. I assume I'm unmuted, so good for me. So if you haven't already started, I just wanted to give you kind of an idea of where we're going with this. And even if you have, some of these will still apply to you. So the first step, if you don't have one already, is that we will get you set up with a repository. Some of you may have received an email with an outline of expectations and directions. We'll be in touch with each of you individually if you're a new member, just to make sure that we have the information correct that we need. We'll get your repository set up and send you some very basic getting started information. We're going to try and have a training session in December, date to be determined. Anybody is welcome to that. It's primarily going to be geared towards our newer users who have no experience with the system, but those of you who've been around for a while and maybe haven't used it in a while are welcome to attend as well. Typically, so far, we haven't been doing like actual live synchronous training sessions, but pointing you to documentation. So this is kind of part of our working out of what works best in terms of operations and support, how best to do those things. We want to start establishing a regular schedule of user group meetings. So this group of all of you to get together and share experiences and tell us what you want to do and how you want to work together. Do you want to create some groups to work on some shared aspects of the project, some guidance around, ways to use the repository, or investigating, other kinds of aspects of ways we can improve policies and procedures? Do you want to just get together to have like kind of a water cooler style conversation about what you're working on? Those sorts of things, we really want to give that back to you as a community, and we want to help you work together in the way that makes the most sense for you. So we'll be following up with you about how often those user group meetings would happen. We're imagining like maybe 4 times a year, not overwhelming, not every month, not every week or anything like that. But again, the schedule is really going to be kind of a conversation amongst us to figure out what will work best. In terms of our primary mode of support at this point and communication, we have set up a Basecamp community. And that is where you can have a centralized location for really everything you should need to use your Haiku repository. So I'm going to actually take a break from the slides for a second, and I'm going to take us through the Basecamp for Haiku Commons. So I had another one open there. So after this meeting, we will be sending out an invitation to everybody to this Basecamp community. I use Basecamp as a separate standalone application so that I don't have to have in a browser tab, kind of lost in the hundreds of other browser tabs I typically have open. But this is fully web-based, so you don't need to download or install anything to use it. It's a website that you can visit. And it's basically a kind of, holding site, organized site for lots of different things that we can use to communicate with each other. So there's a section here to welcome you that gives you an overview of what is in the Basecamp community. And then there's, if you're more of a visual person, there's a kind of quicker kind of guide to what you can find in this Basecamp. In terms of things that you will probably want to come back to, those are primarily going to be in this Using Haiku Commons folder. So we've really just started this. We hope to be adding more and more here over time. But the main things that you will probably want to consult is a little bit of a support documentation to kind of guide you where to go for resources to find help with various things or find information. And then we have a link here to what is actually in a Google document of a user guide. So user documentation for you as librarians, not end users. We've been building this over the past couple months and have, if you were part of this previously in Powney and Palsy, we've greatly expanded what was available previously, which was a kind of thing that was created by the haiku community. So this guide is actually specifically detailed to us as Haiku Commons. So it has, information about things that are unique to our instance of haiku. It's kind of broken up here into several different areas for like a quick jump to something if you're looking it up, but it's also created so that you can read through it kind of from beginning to end if you're just getting started. So it starts with the definitions document, which kind of defines all of the things, the specific terminology in haiku that you may not be familiar with. And of course I'm on Zoom, so everything's going to be really slow. I apologize I didn't have this open ahead of time. But then at the bottom of each document, there are bookmarks or navigation, sorry. So you can go back to the home from each page, or you can go to the next page in the kind of user guide. So if you're totally new to it, we'd suggest going through it in this order and learning, the concepts in this order. But if you're already familiar with it, or if you, feel like you are a non-traditional learner, you can go back to just the user guide and jump to exactly what you want to see. Going back to Basecamp, for those of you who are new, we have some information about the process we'll do for onboarding. We have here just an overview of kind of who we are and what we're doing as part of the Haiku Commons team that'll be working with you. There's also a documents and files folder, which has a lot of other supplementary information. So some presentations and webinars, meeting notes from the meetings that we'll be having. We created a directory where we have right now listed all of you as primary contacts for each of the member libraries. If you want to get in touch with each other, you have access to edit this. So if you want to change it, or if you want to take your email and name off there, that's totally fine. You can go in and update this yourself. And then the last few aspects that I want to mention that I think are really important are first the message board. So anybody can go in here and add a message, and it will send an email notifying everybody in the community that a message has been added here. So you don't have to log into Basecamp every day to see communications that are happening amongst Basecamp members. You'll get email notifications of them. But if you do keep Basecamp open as a tool that you use, you can come in here and you can see messages. The messages are threaded. So you can have a little bit more organization in there. And then you can actually search across Basecamp, and you can search for particular types of information. If you're members of more than one Basecamp community, you can decide which community you want to search in. And so if you're looking for something that was mentioned previously, or you want to see if someone's brought up an issue or something like that, you can check the message board. So we'll be using the message board primarily for communication with the whole group. We're not going to set up a separate email list. So it'll be crucial that you join Basecamp and get those notifications. Another feature that Basecamp has is actually a chat. They call it Campfire. So this is, a little different than the messaging board. This is probably for more like kind of quick communications, a quick question for someone else who is also on Basecamp at the moment. If someone starts a conversation in the Campfire and no one's been in there for a while, then you will get an email notification to say that, hey, someone's using the Campfire. Why don't you go join in the conversation? But this is available as well for you. And then finally, there's a schedule of events. So this is nice because it will send you reminders the day before and an hour before. So we'll be putting any of our meetings or demos or presentations or training sessions or whatever in this calendar, and you'll automatically get a notification that it's happening. And there'll be a link there to join or register if it's something we've created a registration for. So this is kind of a little bit, we have the basics here that we think you need to get started. And as I said, as we develop more parts of this operational model, we'll be adding more to this Basecamp. So you can see there's several folders here set up for different things like policies and UX work, some of the grant documentation. The narrative is there right now. As we create interim reports and some of the data gathering activities, we'll probably put other things there so that you can have access to them if you're interested. They're certainly not required for you to see those things or interact with them. So that's an overview of the Basecamp community. So after this meeting, everybody will get an email that invites them to Basecamp. Those of you who don't have a repository, a tenant set up already, will get an email to get us started on that process. And then as we move forward, once everybody's in Basecamp, we'll start those discussions about when do we want to have user group meetings, send out probably a doodle poll to set up some training and that sort of thing. So I'm going to go back to slides. The other thing that I wanted to mention about getting started is that we're also starting our UX research in January. So we've hired a consultant to go through a first phase of some research that we're hoping to do as part of the grant project. We've kind of created, we think, and there's a tilde in here to imply these dates are a little fuzzy, but we do know for the first part of the research from roughly January to March, we're going to be having our UX consultant look at back-end workflows and metadata customization. So we're probably thinking that we're going to want to talk to 4 to 6 library volunteers from members for maybe 1 to 2 hours of interviews one-on-one with the UX consultant. And he'll have you walk through, how you do certain processes on the back end, what you mean by metadata customization. There may be some other aspects we may do that are more broad, like a survey or something like that. The results from that work are going to inform development that we'll do with our development partners in the summer. So what we find in this study is going to have a direct impact on the next features we're going to develop into Haiku. And then we're going to do that same process 2 more times. So we think in the summer, we'll probably do something that's more focused on the front end, the user interface. And we're not sure yet exactly how we'll do that. We'll be working on that over the next couple of months. It may involve interviews with actual end users. It will definitely involve your input. It may involve the same kind of interviews. It may be a different style of research or interaction, but that's what we're targeting for the second phase. And then again, the results from that will inform development that will then be done in the fall or into 2023. And then for the last phase, we'll be doing a gap analysis. And again, that may involve some interaction from you, but again, we're still working on that. It may not, we may have enough from the previous research to kind of do that without much more intervention. But of course, as we mentioned throughout the whole course of this, we are planning on doing satisfaction surveys on a kind of routine basis so that we can track over time if we've improved service. And we plan on doing statistics snapshots. How many users do we have? How much content? That sort of thing on a regular basis, which you shouldn't need to necessarily do anything for. So that's just to give you a kind of sense of what the UX kind of work we'll be doing is. We don't anticipate this being a huge burden to you. We certainly are not intending that that's the case. And it's completely on kind of, if you're interested, if you have the availability, if you want to help out. If you just are, you only have capacity to run this repository and be involved in the community, that's fine. But those of you who have availability and interest, we would love to get you involved in this user research that we're going to be doing. So at this point, we're going to move on to small group discussions. So we're going to put you guys in some breakout rooms. And we're going to ask you to introduce yourselves to each other and then talk a little bit about what your individual goals are for either this pilot or if you are using the repository, as a production service, what your goal is for that service. And then we'd also like you to talk about what you need to be successful in this pilot or project. What do you need from us? What do you need from each other? And what do you need from yourself? How would you define success, and what are the things you need to achieve that? And then we're going to reconvene and we're going to talk about group discussion. I'll switch in a minute back to our gallery view so we can see everybody. But the two things we wanted to really talk about were what goals came up amongst you that were common, and what things came up as things that you need to be successful. So we don't have any, we're not going to formally call on like each group to report out or anything. We'll just keep this as an open discussion. So I think maybe to be orderly, so maybe we're not talking over each other too much, which I know I'm terrible at. Maybe we can use the hand raising function, which should be in your Zoom tools that are at the bottom. And we'll just start with that. Close this up. So yeah, does anybody want to start? Were there any goals that you had in common that you thought were interesting or you wanted to talk some more about? And maybe let's talk about that before we move on to talk about what we thought we needed to be successful. I'll call on people if I have to.
I think we got to the what do we need to be successful, although, monetary support from the university always helps. But I know Elizabeth James at West Virginia University and I seem to be in the same boat in terms of what we're looking for and what we hope to get out of using Haiku for Consortia, which is give it a test. We need to see if it can handle archival files, multimedia files, that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm. I see that people are adding some things to the chat too, which is great. I don't mean to force you to use a mic, particularly if you don't have one. So streamlining cost and resource efficiency came up according to Elizabeth. Eager to learn from each other. Repository admin can be lonely, so that's a great comment for or a great voting for our user group. Goals in our group seem to be having parity on existing systems to be able to move to Haiku and using Haiku for multiple purposes and ease of use. And I see that Sherry has her hand up, so please go ahead, Sherry. And your cat can speak as well if she would like to.
And she might, I think it's probably lunchtime. This is Kate. But I was going to add on to the definitely the testing of migration from other systems, because once our little group sort of tests out Haiku in order to get more in our consortium using it, I think, the ability to migrate stuff from existing ones. And also those of us who already have repositories, looking at the features that we have currently that we don't want to lose, like DOI minting or things like that. So I think that's what.
Great. And Kristen added to the Slack, some folks brought up being able to integrate with other discovery services like DPLA and WorldCat or their own discovery layers. And that is something that actually I think we're going to be working on sooner rather than later. So hopefully over the course of the next 2 years, we'll be rolling out more features to you, fairly frequently. So it's good to know, and that's what our UX is about finding out what are the things that you need and getting them to you. So we can also, talk about any of the things that you think you might need kinds of support for success, or what success would mean. For those of you who are doing this as a pilot, that might be different than what what your goal might be or your indication of success might be as an ongoing project.
I don't know if this is the right time or place to ask this, but I'm with Viva, and this is a pilot for us. So my question was, what happens at the end of this 2-year trial period to all this stuff that I've created in this Haiku for Consortia instance?
That's a great question, and something that we are going to be figuring out the specifics of over the next 2 years. But one of our goals is that you have options to export this content and migrate it into a Haiku repository that someone else may be hosting, or we may be also working on developing business models that we might be able to continue to host you in our own Haiku Commons. Or if you don't want to continue with Haiku, but you want to keep the content and the metadata that you've organized together, export options are something we're going to be working on very soon as well. So our goal is that at the end of this project, we'll be able to offer you several avenues for continuation, whether it's continuing in the Haiku Commons service, continuing with Haiku being offered by another provider, or migrating into another repository system that might work better for you. So we definitely have as a goal that you will not lose this work and this effort. Jenya, I see you have your hand up.
I do. I just wanted to add to Elizabeth's question, since it was for Viva. Part of what we're really interested in finding out is what parts of this might serve the broader Viva community. And so our goal is to find it. We know there's a lot of institutions like Radford that are, we really have a wide range from smaller institutions and community colleges all the way up to large doctorals with their own huge repository systems. And we're trying to figure out where the space is that we can best support as a consortium going forward for all of the institutions.
Mm-hmm. There's a comment in the chat about another group that's very interested in, after a recent migration experience, how to maintain the experience that users expect from the previous system, both front end and back end. Excuse me. I want to encourage anybody else who wants to talk about or ask any other questions. Actually, if we don't have lots of other things that we'd like to talk about as a group, we do still have time if anybody has any questions they want to ask at this point. Before we wrap up, we don't need to keep you on the line if there isn't other things that we need to discuss, but I'll basically just say again that we're open right now. Lines are open. Call in. Raise your hand, add to the chat, and we'd be happy to. Yeah, Kirsten.
I guess I just want to ask a question of the group. I mean, one of the struggles in Pawnee with our small schools with very small staff is just even time and bandwidth to figure out how to get started with the project. What things do I want to throw into this? What are best practices? And that's a big part of why we want to have this community and share expertise. Another part of the project that we have done and is going into production, if it hasn't already gone into production, is permissions to provide different layers of expertise through the process of inputting information into the system. And so this idea of collaborating to manage an institutional repository is something, because of deep collaboration that we're doing in Pawnee, but certainly this experiment is also about leveraging expertise, because we know that there's a dearth of staff. In fact, we've got Nick, who's going to assist in going into one of our institutions in Pawnee. Another side gig Nick has is to help with us in terms of archival collections, and he's going to do some advice about how to construct their project. So this idea that you don't have the bandwidth or you don't have the expertise to do everything. And so I was just curious to see what people are thinking in terms of their ability to be successful in this pilot phase, how that is connected to staffing levels. And I will say, I saw lots of nodding heads through all of that as you got the problem. So I think that's a realistic, and that may be something we want to try to shape somewhere in this project about, just how can we leverage, disparate staff across here to help this more effective.
When I just had a quick comment sort of about that too, I'm really encouraged to hear from folks that the short time that you spent together was just the beginning of the conversation, and that you're really looking forward to continuing to talk together. That's really exciting. That shows me that working together and sharing stories is, we're filling a need that exists out there. And we're just happy to continue those conversations and to help facilitate in whatever way we can.
And I do want to encourage people to share, even in the Paolny land, we build up this trust with each other, and we know we can show stuff to each other that's imperfect. Just always recognize whatever you have, it's probably more than the person next to you has, or you can build those pieces together, and to not be shy about sharing the stub of thing that you have, or the preliminary beta alpha draft of something, because it's enormously helpful to everybody else. We want to definitely have this be a trusted community where people can share all of those things and move further faster, right?
Are there any plans to potentially create maybe mini user groups for people who might look at using Haiku the same way? For instance, I'm really interested in an archive special collections perspective. So I would love to contribute to any of the work that you're doing, Nick, on that front.
I think that how we shape the community is really up to us. We aren't necessarily coming into this with a ton of preconceived notions about how this community will work. That said, I think probably our next to do is to create some beginning infrastructure for you as a user group to help you coordinate around what you want to do. But I think, yes, user groups that are focused on specific use cases might be very, very useful for you. And then from there, you can decide if there are certain activities that you want to work on together. Just as an example, something that we did in the last year, we had the opportunity to participate in a small pilot project with AP Trust around digital preservation. So if we came up with a need like digital preservation, for example, that a group of users wanted to explore, how could we implement something within the Haiku community around that? We could certainly facilitate that. If a group wanted to work on some, shared help or advice or guidance documents about how to coordinate your project, or what kind of standards to follow in digitization or things like that. I mean, I think all of those opportunities are open, and it really depends on what you guys want to do, what you have the bandwidth to do. And I think our challenge is going to be helping you to coordinate and organize yourself to make those things happen. Because we are, a fairly large group at this point. And so I know if we come to a user group meeting with a blank agenda and say, what do you want to talk about? That's not going to be a great way to get started. So I think that we're going to be working on that. And if you have ideas individually, we'd love to hear them. I see there was in the chat, having easily defined assignable Haiku roles for new staff users would be a good start. We have done some work on roles and permissions and how those happen and what they can do over the last 4 or 5 months in particular. And so that's a new aspect of the documentation that those of you who are using Haiku before will have as a new feature. And it is also flexible though. You have the ability to create your own roles and permission groups, and we can talk about that and how that happens. And, as a community, discuss whether what's there is how we want to do it or not. Okay, we have just a few minutes left until it's time to break. So I'm going to kind of transition us out of group discussion, and I'm going to go back to my slides for a second if I can find them. I probably shouldn't. There we go. So our next steps, as we talked about a little bit earlier, we'll be setting up repositories for the new members. We'll be sending out an invitation to you to join Basecamp. I hope that that will go out today. It may not go out until Monday, so don't be concerned if you don't hear from us today. And then once we get everybody into Basecamp, we'll start talking about our first meeting as a user group again and getting started with that. And as I said, we'll be starting the UX stuff research in January. So we'll probably also be using Basecamp to push out information about what we're doing there and talk about opportunities to participate in that. If you would like to get in touch with us before we get in touch with you, here are some ways to contact us. We do have a website for the project Haiku for Consortia. So Haiku for Consortia is the name of our series of grants and our projects working on it together. Haiku Commons is the name of the service. So we have a Haiku for Consortia website if you're interested in finding out more about what we've been doing. And we have a Twitter, Haiku for Consortia, although I don't think we've been super active on that. If you need to email us directly, you can use either of these two email addresses or any of us individually if that's easier for you. consortial-ir@palsi.org or help@haikuforconsortia.org. And I have the link to the Basecamp invitation there. It's a long string of numbers and letters. If you manage to copy it down, great. If not, as I said, it'll be in an email that will come out to you after this. So I think that's all from us. If there are any last questions, we have a minute or two, but other than that, I'm going to say thank you all so much for being here today, particularly because we kind of pulled this together kind of short notice. So it's great to see so many of you here, and we really look forward to starting to work with you very soon.
Yes, thanks a lot. It's so nice to see so many of you here today, and thank you for making time.
And I'm so glad everybody wants to talk to each other. I mean, on one hand, I'm sorry we didn't give you more time today, but there is that element of this is a good thing, and you have energy moving forward to do it more. So get into Basecamp and start talking.
And we'll definitely send the recording along as well as the slides and all of the relevant links.
All right. Great, everybody. Thank you, and have a great rest of your Friday and weekend.